A very good morning. You're welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. Wherever you are acquiring us, you're very welcome along. For some of you who don't know, we are available as an audio-only stream. If you want to just listen to us, run us through your car system, or just have us in your ears, you can go on to offtheball.com and hit the play button at the top right-hand corner. And, well, then this is a breakfast radio show for you. For the rest of you, you're very welcome along, and you can see us in glorious Technicolor on youtube.com/offtheball or on facebook.com/offtheball. And we also stream live, of course, on Twitter and Periscope every morning. Owen, how are you?
Very well.
Are you busy?
Very busy. Yeah, I've been up for 5 hours this morning. I've been following the Wahlberg routine all morning after it came to light yesterday, what he actually does in the morning. So I got up at 2:30 this morning, or is it 3:30? I can't quite remember whatever Wahlberg's instructions were. I prayed for an hour. I went for a nap for an hour and a half, and I got a half an hour round of golfing this morning before actually coming to the office. So a very
Here we go. It's on screen. 2:30 a.m. Who wakes up at 2:30? Right, it's far too early.
So this is on his Instagram account, Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, he gets to bed at 7:30. That's who gets up at 2:30. Somebody goes to bed at 7:30.
Yeah, so for anybody who's listening and can't actually see this, so he wakes up at 2:30 in the morning. Then there's like a 15-minute period before he starts praying. So he starts praying at 2:45 in the morning and proceeds to pray for half an hour, about as long as the Tyrone team pray before matches. 3:15 then, it's breakfast time. So he's up for 45 minutes before he actually eats anything. And then at 3:40 to 5:15 a.m., he has a workout. Then at 5:30 a.m., he's got a post-workout meal. And then it gets weird. At 6 a.m., he showers for an hour and a half. So from 6 a.m. until 7:30, he showers.
I think post-shower, he does something that he doesn't want to write down.
Well, we've got to take Mark Wahlberg at his word here. Are you saying that he's hiding information from us?
Yeah, I'm saying that there's he has a shower, it's 5 minutes, gets dry, and then he does it every once for an hour and a half. An hour and 20 minutes.
But then he goes golfing at 7:30.
3 minutes.
He goes golfing at 7:30 for half an hour. Like, is this golf course? Is it a driving range? Is it just go to the putting green? Does he play 2 holes?
It's holes out his back garden, right? I mean, this is obviously on his country mansion estate somewhere outside Boston.
It must be. And then he has this is also weird, he has a snack at 8 o'clock for an hour and a half. How big is this snack? Then at 9:30 he goes to the cryo chamber recovery, and then another snack after an hour in the cryo chamber. That is unhealthy, Mark Wahlberg. You're not supposed to stay and do cryotherapy for a full hour. He has another stack at 10:30. This one only takes him half an hour to eat before family time /meeting/work calls all in one at 11 to 1. Then an hour-long lunch at 1 o'clock, meeting/work calls at 2. 3 o'clock, he picks up his kids. At 3:30, he has another snack. 4 o'clock, workout number 2 for an hour until another shower at 5 o'clock. At 5:30, it's dinner/family time, and at 7:30, it is bedtime. My immediate thought on this...
The kids put themselves to bed at 8.
Yeah, precisely. My immediate thought on this is, you could avoid getting up at 2:30, and you could just push all of this back by 4 hours. You could go to bed at 11:30 and get up at 6:30, and you would resemble much more of a normal human being. Why does he have to be up at 2:30?
Well, the early bird catches the worm.
Well, it sure does, but there's no worms to be caught at 2:30 in the morning, is what I would say.
George W. Bush is the only other person I know who went to bed at 7:30. So he would go to bed at 7:30 every night, and everybody's like, oh, it's a bit weird that, you're the leader of the free world and you're just going to bed at 7:30 when, loads of important things are happening in the world. But, not that much bad stuff happened apart from the plunging of the world into chaos under his rule.
Well, that's it. Maybe he was living himself on Middle Eastern time. He just wanted to see how his troops abroad were doing.
Yeah.
And he got up at 2:30, which was 9 a.m. Iraq time, let's just say. So that's why
apparently loads of people are trying to do this now. This is
I tried it this morning. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, you're a bit bleary-eyed now.
I'll not be doing it again.
Who are you praying to?
That's the thing. I couldn't find enough gods to pray to in that amount of time that Mark Wahlberg took to pray. I was wondering, what religion is Mark Wahlberg that requires him to pray at that particular time?
His devotion at 2:30 in the morning.
Because I presume that's the reason why he's getting up at that time is because of his religion. But
I didn't Google it. I couldn't be arsed. I'm sorry. I presume he's an Irish Catholic from Boston.
He must be. The golf thing, though, there is the weirdest thing. If I could get out every morning and play half an hour of golf, I would. But it's borderline impossible.
Well, McGregor had 4 holes in his house up the north before he moved to America, and Paul Carrington has a hangar beside his house where he's got some indoor holes.
Right. That actually must be it, because he is essentially a professional golfer, Mark Wahlberg. I'm not sure, every time you see him in Entourage, it's just him on the golf course being a bit of a dick, which is actually one of the best characters in TV. So it's just he's obsessed with the sport. It's all he plays.
He's playing himself, right?
Yeah.
He's obsessed with American football as well, obviously drunkenly trying to kiss Tom Brady every time he can, and Tom Brady kind of humouring him but trying not to breathe in the fumes or somehow by osmosis have the alcohol enter his system.
Even the TB12 method must be a little bit creeped out by getting up at 2:30 in the morning. Even that is weird for Tom Brady.
It's a busy weekend in terms of the Women's All-Ireland football final. We're going to be giving away tickets. I'll tell you how you can win those in a couple of minutes' time. We're going to preview that as well. We're going to talk about the PwC Hurling All-Stars, which the shortlist has been announced. The 3-man list for the Hurler of the Year has also been announced. 2 Galway, 1 Limerick in that one. We'll preview Dublin Cork, as I said. Graham Hunter's going to join us around about 10 to 9 this morning to talk about all things European football. If you have any questions for Graham, you can tweet us at Off The Ball. Time now, though, for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Yeah, so it's Cork against Dublin in the All-Ireland football final this weekend. The front cover of the Examiner dealing with defeat, Cork's Orla Finn on dominance and dynasties. There's also lots of stuff about Martin O'Neill, the continuing fallout from the 2 weeks of chaos that we've just lived through from an Irish football perspective. O'Neill defends production line, but how sound are Ireland's structures? Colin O'Dowda was doing the press yesterday, and the line that most of the tabloids have gone with is that, like, oh, look, we still respect Roy Keane. But everybody else is starting to ask questions about coach education, the role of the FAI in all of this, and Liam Mackey's making the point that now there are at least some options available for Martin O'Neill throughout the qualifying campaign, by virtue of the fact that he had nobody fit to play in the game in Poland and now has found some stuff out about some players.
Yeah, and I think Mackey goes through some of the young potential talent that could be coming through over the next couple of years. Like, there has been this argument levelled against O'Neill and Keane that they really only care about the current crop and they don't really care too much about the future, which doesn't really make too much sense if Martin O'Neill has been around the game for as long as he has, that he doesn't value future kind of earnings in terms of Irish success when it comes into the context of the present team, because ultimately the present does depend on the future quite a bit when it comes to international football, and that should have been in stark reality, and it should have been put right in front of him on that night in Cardiff last week because of the young talent they had at their disposal. So I don't think that's necessarily true. I think we can expect to see a lot more fresh faces over the next year or so. The thing is, we don't know what's going to happen next month. If we lose both those games next month, does us officially mark the end of their tenure.
All 15 of Limerick's All-Ireland final starters in running for the PwC All-Star Awards and the Hurler of the Year shortlist. Cian Lynch is the Limerick representative. Mannion and Pádraig Mannion and Joe Canning are the other two. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well, just kind of into some of the details of that. But it's interesting, obviously, that the shortlist for Young Player of the Year, sorry, I didn't give you that. Dara Fitzgibbon, Kyle Hayes and Mark Coleman. So 2 Cork and 1 Limerick. Does Kyle Hayes get it?
Probably, yeah. You'd expect him to, like, given his performance in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It's essentially his performance came at a time when Limerick won the All-Ireland. Despite the fact that actually the man who won the All-Ireland for Limerick technically was Shane Dowling, and it's conspicuous by his absence there.
He's the one Limerick player who could have had a shout and who doesn't. I don't remember all 15 starters from an All-Ireland final.
I know
before. Does it happen all the time?
It's happened before. It happened with Tip a couple of years ago.
Did it?
Yeah, I'm not sure was that the first time. I'm not sure was that a novel thing, but just because it was recent, I do remember that. So I guess it's more unusual now, given we've seen more teams play more matches and there's a wider spread of form across the country. So I guess that's a huge achievement from Limerick to do it, given the season we've had.
Kilkenny won a record 9 in 2003, 83, 2009 and 2008. Don't know why I did 9 and 08 backwards. But 83, 2000 and 2008. It's like a mystery voice from Wikipedia in my head. It's the voice of God. Once Mary asked me to continue Micheál's legacy, I couldn't say no. 3 months after the death of their manager, Louth ladies go to Croke Park on Sunday, determined to honour his memory. Louth manager Micheál McKeown suffered a brain hemorrhage on the morning of their Leinster Junior Football Championship semi-final in June and died 2 days later after speaking with Micheál's widow, Darren Bishop, in the inset. Took over the role and has led them to the final. It's a remarkable story ahead of the Junior All-Ireland football final at the weekend. O'Neill and FAI in the dark over Rice plans. This is Dan McDonald has this story about Declan Rice. Martin O'Neill has claimed he's still in the dark about Declan Rice's intentions. I don't know any more than you do at this particular juncture. Honestly, I genuinely don't. There's no point in me commenting here positively or negatively until I get to talk to the people again. Which would suggest to me most of the speculation about him being close to a comeback, which is basically how the story has been spun in recent days, has been bunkum.
He's going to meet his parents, though.
And that actually we're as far away from him saying yes as we ever were.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that at all. I think we're certainly nearing a decision.
Why do you feel hopeful? What, like, hope being you want him to come back, right? I think we all probably, most of us, want him to play for Ireland at this point. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, from some of the things he said in the past, he clearly identifies with the country. There's clearly a large part of Declan Rice he wants to play for Ireland. Very much like on a different plane to Jack Grealish. Like, I think we're getting sucked into the idea that this is just Jack Grealish all over again. It's not. There's a little more to it. And Martin O'Neill, as has been reported as well this morning, is off to meet Declan Rice's parents to try and sort out the situation, to try and figure out where his head is at in terms of reaching a decision. And I'd be quietly confident at this point that Martin O'Neill is going to be able to have some sway over that and try and inform them that, yes, international football is important in terms of your commercial future, but playing for Ireland can also achieve that goal of Ireland get good at football again. Now that is a big if, and that is a problem. The thing is, England are also improving. They're also getting a lot better. And if you listen to, say, like just watching the Sunday Supplement last week and hearing some of the press talk about Declan Rice, there is absolutely no guarantee he will ever get that England cap, and it may never happen for him. Now, he may look at, if you want to make a Jack Grealish comparison, he may look at Jack Grealish now and say, well, it took him a couple of years, but a bit of form and maybe looked after in the right way because of the high-profile nature of him being English now, helped him achieve that upturn in his trajectory. So Grealish will get his English cap one day. Will Declan Rice, basically? There is a bit of uncertainty about that.
Keane still has the support of the squad as the back page headline on the Times Ireland edition. O'Dowda denies rift between players and coach. Roy Keane still has the support of the entire Ireland squad, according to Callum O'Dowda and Aidan O'Brien. And these are two of the younger players, obviously, who are going to be mainstays of the squad, you would think, for the next while. This is despite the fact, obviously, that it's been reported from Stephen Ward's WhatsApp message that Keane called Harry Arter an effing prick while claiming that Keane and Walters nearly came to blows. I mean, it's hard to put too much store in what young players say in the press conference after, or in like an impromptu press gathering in the aftermath of we still love the assistant manager. You know, I mean, it's not that different from like, if it's 100% true, yeah, of course, look, we're getting on grand. It's hard to tell, right?
Yeah, well, he's not going to say Roy Keane is a shite assistant manager, is he?
I mean, that would be like a perfect end to a fortnight of...
Like he just says that
What did he even do? Puts out the cones, shouts a bit, talks about winning all those Premier Leagues. Who does he think he is, Billy Big Balls?
If you're going to say that about Roy Keane, the only safe place to do it is in a WhatsApp voice message. You don't say that in a press conference.
Yeah,
you can keep it in confidence with your friends who will definitely not screw you over, and share it so that the world can hear what you really think.
Yeah. There's a great piece by Andy McAvoy, who is an all-star selector, talking about the omission of Shane Dowling. Basically saying that Dowling was very influential across the course of the championship and can probably feel a little bit hard done by, that there is precedent for somebody getting an all-star nomination in the past. And like, the point about the all-star nomination is not that you get the all-star, it's that you get to go on the night. Yeah. It's like, and the all-stars is a great night where a massive jamboree of people come, have the crack, and then all go to Coppers or wherever they can get into at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
They're all stars. They will get into Coppers.
Well, some of the nominees.
Oh, sorry, nominees. You will definitely get into Coppers.
And some of the hurlers, you know.
You're an intermediate club player. You will definitely get into Coppers.
Well, okay. Apparently, Owen McGrath from Waterford in 07 was a sub all season, but had been so effective as a sub that they decided that he was worth a nominee in the top 45 hurlers in the country for that year. I mean, when you put it like that, Dowling probably is in the top 45 hurlers in the country in this calendar year in terms of impact.
Yeah. Yeah, like I agree. I think
I was kind of thinking, look, it's fair enough. You know, there was a couple of games where he didn't get off the bench at all.
He basically won the semi-final and won the All-Ireland for them.
Come the All-Ireland series, he was introduced after 58 minutes against Kilkenny, 56 against Cork, and 55 against Galway. And the Galway one had like 25 minutes of injury time.
Yeah.
So,
and for a celebration as well, he deserves a nomination.
I mean, there should be a special award to get in there on the night, best celebration of the year. Shane Dowling. Best celebration by Shane Dowling in an All-Ireland final too. Come on.
Like is there a criteria nailed down in terms of best performance, most impactful? Because if you put it down to most impactful, I don't think you can deny that Shane Dowling deserves to be the top 45 hurlers of the year. If you talk about who put in the most minutes of greatness throughout the season, and maybe you could make a case that Shane Dowling doesn't deserve to be there, but I think the former completely outweighs the latter there.
And here's the thing, as far as I know, it's a debate around the table as opposed to these are the criteria, it's marks out of 10, and at the end of it you get a number and everybody goes, Jesus, those numbers don't really work for us, so...
Well, Shane Dowling surely gets to go to the All-Stars, no? Does he not have an invitation now?
Would you, I mean, are you going to the PPIs?
The PPI is
The
in the
IMROs.
IMRO Awards.
Are you?
I don't think so, no, I'm not sure.
Would you feel a bit like, oh, geez, I can't go
Why?
because you didn't get a nomination?
Did I not? You're breaking my heart here.
Do you know what I mean, though? It's a bit like...
Yeah, of course I would. If there was a ticket going, if Shane Dowling, if somebody says Shane Dowling, there's a ticket for the PwC All Stars going, Convention Centre, Dublin.
Every one of his teammates got... I mean, I hope he does go. It'd be good. It's a good night, you know?
It's not literally every one of his teammates. It's just those people who started. Now, that is the thing that might rub salt in the wounds. Where John Kiley's like, no, you're almost more important as a finisher rather than a starter. Believe me. And then all the GEA intelligentsia who were actually sitting around that round table in a Croke Park boardroom were like, actually, no, you're not, Shane. So that must actually be a bit of a kick in the teeth, when in actual fact he was like one of their top 5 most important players in the semi-final and final. Can we go that far?
Anthony Joshua's fighting in 10 days' time. Forget Fury, I'm the world number one, he says in the front of the Telegraph this morning. I mean, they should just get these good fights on, right? Come on.
I was just trying to think. Yeah, like the Joshua fight in 10 days' time, I completely forgot that was happening.
Me too.
I was just trying to think of the opponent there. It's Povetkin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that just tells you all you need to know about where that heavyweight kind of build-up has gone and how staggered it's been and how much we're in kind of an impasse at the moment. Just waiting, as you say, for the big names to get it on. But you would expect 2019 to be one of the best years of heavyweight boxing we've seen.
We thought 2018 was going to be... Yeah, I mean, that's
was going to be that year.
But
But that's more down to Fury maybe not getting his act together.
Fury's going to fight Wilder, most likely in Vegas in early December, says Gareth A. Davis.
Okay, so you got Fury is a lot fitter right now. Like that is... Then 12 months ago. Like,
yeah, okay, fair enough.
We may have like put that...
but is there like...
But then you've also got someone like Dillian White, who's had a really good year.
Isn't the possibility though that Anthony Joshua, like, what's his fight against Povetkin going to be like?
Probably what the last 2 Joshua fights have been like, where he's unspectacular, gets the job done, wins it on points. Does Povetkin go down? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Like, I think we're all going to look back in the Klitschko fight, and maybe we're all kind of overrating how amazing that was from a Joshua perspective. Like, the people who dislike Anthony Joshua will say that Klitschko was well over the hill at that point, and maybe from what we've seen over his last couple of performances, there might be some credence in that argument. So does Anthony Joshua need to knock Povetkin out early to get back to his dominant ways, to get back to the point where we looked at him like this invincible heavyweight who wouldn't be beaten for a decade? Because he's certainly not looking invincible at the moment.
No.
And the discourse has changed dramatically around him, where suddenly you've got a number of top heavyweights. And maybe the idea of the heavyweight division being so strong now is down to the fact that Joshua's come down rather than the fact that everybody else has come up to his level.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see styles make fights, obviously, but you want to see people of a somewhat similar ability fighting against each other and kind of going at it.
Yeah, like as Kevin Kilbane always says, he doesn't care if it's a crap game as long as it's a close game, sort of thing. So maybe that's the same thing when it comes to heavyweight boxing.
Right. That's me done. What have you got for us?
We Trust Roy is the back of the Irish Daily Mail. You forgot your Racing Post, actually.
Ah, the Racing Post.
What have you got there?
Oh yeah, Falcon swoops in Kerry National. This was very annoying. Yesterday I was in a meeting until about 4:30, came out and Kev was like, oh, I've got 2 for you for the 420 Listo, which is the national. And he got first and third in our tipping group. I was like, oh, come on. So Doncaster Boost is La-di-da confirmed a runner in the Ledger. It's obviously Champions Weekend this weekend in Ireland, and we're going to be broadcasting live from the Leopardstown Inn on Friday night. Joe Schmidt's going to be there, John Small is going to be there, and Johnny Mert is going to be there. Johnny Ward's going to be there, and John Duggan might be there. So it's going to be Joe, Johnny, John, Johnny, John. Sure. United Nations.
Why don't you just let Joe present instead of you?
New tournament gets positive response from betting community. So the UEFA's brand new project, the Nations League, made its debut over the weekend, and though it's far too early to tell whether it's going to be a smash hit, the initial reaction from the betting community has been cautiously optimistic. Because
As soon as Harry Kane came out on Saturday night and said the referee was shit, then we knew this was real. Then we knew this was a tournament worth getting behind. So
I've got one more for you. I've got the Irish news. Yeah, here it is. Mulholland's dreams on hold. Is there not a Mulholland Drive joke that you could have made there? New Queen's boss making no secret of his down ambitions. There you go.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is
Screw you, Owen. Screw you, right? I can't wait.
What, you can't wait for my vision to start deserting me?
And they start putting tiny stuff up on the screen for you.
2020 feels pretty good, I must say. O'Dowda says players fully behind Keane. That's Philip Quinn's story on the Callum O'Dowda quotes. Also, Schmeichel backs Jose to win Premier League. Manchester United legend Peter Schmeichel believes that close supporters need to be patient with Jose Mourinho. He thinks he can win a Premier League title if he stays around for another season or so.
Bland man says bland thing about nothing.
Well, about a not-so-bland subject matter, so that's why you get onto the back page, isn't it?
It's pretty bland, isn't it? He might at some point, if he's given time, safe in the knowledge that he's never going to be given the opportunity or the time to stick around to do it. It's nonsense. Schmeichel's a blowhard.
Do you think so?
Like a bland blowhard, the worst type.
Can you be a bland blowhard? Is that not a bit of an oxymoron?
You can shout about stuff and you can gesticulate wildly about stuff, and then when people go, "Oh, what did you just say?"
Just screaming the word vanilla from the rooftop.
Exactly.
It's a good description of Peter Schmeichel. Back page of the Herald is O'Neill targets nations. Ireland boss confident team can get back in hunt with Arthur returning to the fold. I just want to keep that shirt, says Aidan O'Brien. Back page of the Mirror is why Jose missed both United didn't convince £45 million ace that they were better than Bayern. And belt up Tyson. Joshua laughs off Fury's #1 claim, as we were just speaking about. Back page of the Sun this morning is piece by piece, rebuilding job for O'Neill. We've also got 15 limits of Shane on the top of the back page of the Sun. That is the snub for Shane Dowling in the PwC All-Star nominations. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is Rice to see you. O'Neill set to meet Declan's family. That is the story we were just speaking about. So can he persuade Declan Rice via his parents to play for Ireland once again?
It's a Paul Lennon story, so obviously very well sourced. The hugely talented midfielder is also keen on remaining with his country despite his June summit with England boss Gareth Southgate. Well, that's different, right?
Yeah. Is it starting to illuminate the path for you now that Declan Rice is walking, aka back to the shores?
Well, then why leave in the first place? What's that about?
He didn't leave.
Why bring this whole thing up? Oh, I've got a bit of a hammer.
Because was there not a little bit of trouble in the camp that he was supposed to be in?
But
is that not fair enough for him to say? If Harry Arter,
I'm going to play, just not at the minute, right? Just not at the minute. I'm committed to Ireland. I'm going to play, just not at the minute.
And if my first game happens to coincide with the first game that doesn't involve Roy Keane, then that's just a coincidence.
Well, then say that. Don't say I want to play for England.
Did he say that?
Or I'm thinking about playing for England.
He didn't say I want to play for England. He says he's just weighing it up. And has the story got legs to the point where David Gold talking to Declan Rice and turning his head just wasn't the thing? West Ham maybe have got an unfair rap in all of this.
I'm sorry. You can give West Ham whatever rap you want, but it ain't ever going to be unfair.
But maybe it's just not true. Maybe David Gold never had that conversation with Declan Rice.
The concerted effort from Rice and from Pellegrini and from the fact that Gareth Southgate, there was no conversation at any point ever between any of these people. Certainly Rice, certainly Pellegrini and Gold. Gold said Pellegrini will turn him into an England international. That's what he said. One of your jobs here, man who works for me, is to do this thing that I want. And the manager's going to go, I don't give a shit about you, David Gold. Who are you? You can't sack me. So we'll see.
We will see. Maybe I'm giving David Gold too much credit here. Maybe he's maybe there's nice elements of David Gold as well as some not so nice elements. If he stole Declan Rice, though, it would be just pure evil. Back page of The Guardian then this morning, it's an interesting story. It is not working. Test rugby facing ruin. World body fears for future of the game. So this is Augustine Pichot speaking and Robert Kitson reporting that the whole world rugby model is just completely messed up at the moment. It's not working. The sport is regressing on an international level, and the reason and the way we can fix this is by compressing international breaks, or the test season, so to speak, into one big window, aka July is what they're suggesting. So get rid of the November internationals, get rid of the June internationals, and just make one big international test season in July.
And so the response from the clubs has been like, oh great, we can play club rugby in June. And he's saying you're making your players play too much rugby, and so they're getting absolutely flogged. And I know as a player that's too much rugby for me to play. Like, they haven't worked out a solution. The other aspect of this is that they met last year, or maybe it was 18 months ago, in San Francisco, and hammered out a deal and said, right, this is the new global calendar, we're all grand, we're all committed up to 2023. And already he's saying we need to meet again and make sure that a new deal is in place to take us for 10 years up from the next World Cup on. So the deal that they did has already broken down. There are too many disparate groups in rugby who have different agendas. The English Premiership group, they were subject of a takeover bid by a VC firm who used to own Formula One. They turned that down this week. And they want something very different from what the RFU want and from what the unions want. But even the unions at international level don't really know what they want, because they can't agree with each other, because they've all stabbed each other in the back so much when it comes to World Cup bids, refereeing committees, money being spent from TV deals. There's the nest of vipers at the top. There's the nest of vipers at club level who are fighting with each other and then outwardly fighting with the unions. And in the middle, the players are getting played, concussed, beaten up, broken, played, concussed, beaten up, broken. And it's like, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, that the nest at the top that you talk about probably cares more about the grassroots level of rugby than the nest in the middle, than the clubs.
Yeah, totally. The clubs, it's not the club's job, as they see it, to foster grassroots rugby. They might want an academy, but academies are really expensive.
Yeah.
Like really, really expensive.
And short-term gains are far more attractive.
And you don't even know if any of those guys are going to be any good. Much better to have like the national team hive off all the best players, pay for underage coaching, and then produce them to you as fully fledged professionals that you can steal, flog, take, and profit off the back of. Now, they're not doing a very good job profiting off the back. So in England, there's been a fetish about the club owners know the future of the game, and we need to back the club owners because they give access to certain key rugby journalists to the stories, and they tell them what's going on. So therefore, those stories end up being the one.
What a ridiculous notion!
The dominant rugby narrative. But actually, those clubs are some of the worst run sports organisations in world sport. Almost none of them are profitable, and almost none of them have a brilliant track record of looking after and minding their players. So,
but imagine if you said that about any other sport, where it's like Stan Kroenke and Roman Abramovich know what's best for the future of football. Like, it's just a completely nonsense notion. Say it about any of the NFL owners that they care about the future of American football. Like, that is ridiculous. I'm not even sure I hadn't heard that before until you said that there is this idea that the club owners really care about the future of rugby in England. Because that just can't be the case. Those two things can't coexist. When you want to profit off a sports team, you can't care about the grassroots. All you've got to care about is what is the bottom line. And if that means, as you say, flogging your players, concussing your players, whatever it may be, putting them out week after week after week, putting bums in seats every single week, and that's all you care about. Like, that can't coexist with things. And maybe rugby needs to face up to the idea that will never coexist, that you need to find a way for these two things to balance themselves out. Football, to a certain extent, is living in that reality now, and ultimately rugby, in everything they do, if they want to be successful, if they want to be a far more popular sport in the world than they currently are, well, you could look at a lot worse models than football internationally. But again, with the numbers on the ground there, that's a very different animal.
We did want to play you this. It was Ronan O'Gara yesterday. It was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Obviously, everybody's asking anybody involved, even tangentially, with Irish rugby in the current squad, whether or not we should be trying to win the World Cup. And like, we're in that phase of the belief system where everyone's like, yeah, well, this is a possibility. And like, I'm sure the players feel this as well, that like they're going to be asked this question, they need an answer for it. So here's what Ronan O'Gara's answer was when he was asked about Ireland's chances in the World Cup.
This current group, they are hugely consistent. They have a brilliant coach, and they have a lot of competition for places. But the timing has to be right when the World Cup comes around. Sport is so unpredictable. Look, current group in green have been really impressive. I mean, they have a coach who believes that they can win it and maybe should win it, which is a big comment, but I think with the belief they get from him, everything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's not saying we're going to go and win the World Cup. there's no tub thumping, chest thumping from Ireland at this stage ahead of the World Cup, because it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
No. Previous experiences have taught us that that sort of attitude doesn't always work. But was it always kind of aggressive, sort of tricolour in the air, we're going to win the World Cup sort of thing?
No. In fairness, it wasn't. It never was.
No.
Because there's always New Zealand. And we all know that New Zealand are going to win the World Cup. We were told on this very show we should just hand them over the trophy.
Yeah, like, crown them now.
Yeah.
We'll play the final now.
Chris is right. Chris O'Toole is right. You can check that out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball. Just want to play you this, though. It's Matt Williams and Keith Wood talking about Ronan O'Gara being inducted into the Rugby Hall of Fame at Rugby yesterday.
Until half an hour ago that he was inducted in. And I'd been talking about him earlier on, and we were talking about some of his pure excellence that he had. He's a man who delivered on every stage, and had an unbelievably long career, but a phenomenal winner, and absolutely deserving of his place in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I would think so. Matt, does he get the credit he deserves in the Southern Hemisphere? Sometimes, from afar, it can be, the lads in green are Brian O'Driscoll and the rest.
I think the answer to that, Joe, is no, he doesn't. And I think you've mentioned the name there. If he wasn't in the same generation as Brian, Rog would be regarded as Ireland's greatest back since Jackie Kyle. He had a phenomenally successful career, the trophies he won, and so on. But I think he wasn't, or has never been given the credit outside of Ireland that he deserves. And I think the recognition that being placed in the Hall of Fame gives him on the world stage is a rich reward. Because, although I never coached Roger, but I coached against him a lot. And, he wasn't a good player, he was a fantastic player.
Yeah, the great part about O'Gara's rugby story is that it's not written yet. Like, the coaching aspect of his career has gone from, that's a really interesting decision to go there, and then he gets promoted within Racing, and now he's off to New Zealand, and he's like, they double down, they come back for a second year in the most successful, best rugby team. I mean, them and Leinster, obviously, in that
would be a match worth setting up
in the world. So there was some chatter about that. It would be a good idea.
Yeah,
you could find a window. Like, if you could add that and then have the international series that starts
in July.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to see that?
Wouldn't be a bad shout. I wonder, with Ronan O'Gara, does the IRFU have a duty of care when it comes to Ronan O'Gara, that they see an Irishman spreading his wings abroad and are like, he's probably going to come back to these shores eventually. We need to keep a close eye on exactly what he's doing. Of course, so far, it's going very, very well. But say if the RFU thinks, now's the time to get Ronan O'Gara if we want him to develop into the coach he is. So let's just say Ireland win the World Cup next year. Let's say Leinster win the Champions Cup again this season. So the latter is definitely a life possibility. The former probably a little bit less. But let's just say it happens, or even a final and they come close to New Zealand. Then suddenly the IRFU can look at their own structures and say, we're doing pretty well here. We've got some of the best coaches in the world here. If Joe Schmidt stays on, then suddenly at Leinster you've got Stuart Lancaster, Leo Cullen, you've got Joe Schmidt in your own setup. And Ronan O'Gara has run his course with Canterbury Crusaders and he's ready for the next move. Does the IRFU then say to themselves, well, if we want to take him to the next level, we've got the best coaches on our shores. He's an Irishman. We need to bring him back home here ASAP, and he's got to be satisfied with whatever role we're going to give him, even if he wants to become a head coach. Like, I wonder at what point do they need to look at that and all those Irish coaches abroad and take it upon themselves to actually turn them into the coaches that they want them to be?
I guess there's you can't create a job and somebody else is kind of paying them at the moment and doing that, developing them into those coaches. So, we have backs coaches. The Wild Geese coaching graphic from the other day, was that the players? But I think there's a coaching
coaches as well. Rui O'Connor had it in the window, yeah.
It's great that those clubs are paying for the development of those coaches. I mean, this is kind of the opposite side where the coaches start to go, well, hang on a second, we're paying a lot of the wages of these players. Anyway, the RFU aren't going to pay for all those coaches, and actually they get much better day-to-day match experience.
Yeah.
So maybe you make a decision that this guy is going to be, but is it him and O'Connell? At some point, there's talk that they'll join together. They'll, some kind of superhero movie and go and take over Munster, and then after Munster roll into the Ireland gig. I don't know. I mean, that's all. It's all the land of fantasy, but it would be pretty interesting.
What is the first domino there, actually? Is it for, I don't know, for club rugby in the Southern Hemisphere to completely take over, and then Razzie Erasmus gets poached by the Stormers, and then the Springboks poach Johan van Gran, and then suddenly Munster are like Paul O'Connell, Ronan O'Gara, superhero movie right here in Thomond Park?
I think a couple of years away. No?
Yeah, but do you think that's the first, like, where does the domino have to fall for Johan van Gran? Say if he has a very successful couple of years with Munster, for that to happen, because...
Who knows? I mean, maybe they don't take over Munster. Maybe they take over something else. And then they're all to Ireland and come back. I don't know.
Or maybe they take over Leinster after, Lancaster and Leo Cullen are the All Blacks coaches. And then there's like this ultimate trade-off where it's like, give us Paulie and Rog and we'll give you Joey Carberry. And then that's how the whole story ends.
I mean, it's too late for that. That bit's already done. You gave that away already. Can't go, that thing that I gave you need to pay me for it now. I was like, well, hang on. I was like, what?
Always lead with good stuff is what I say. Use your biggest bargaining chip first.
Right, so Eddie Brennan was on TV on Off the Ball last night talking to the lads about taking over the Laois gig, and here he is speaking specifically about the issue of systems in hurling.
I from my own experience and what I've seen, look, both as a player and as an analyst sitting there watching it, you have to go after something if you want to win it. It's as simple as that. And yeah, there might be certain hurdles that you have to jump, or certain ways you have to set up from game to game. And I don't see any one system as being the way forward. I think I would look in at the likes of what Derek McGrath and Davy Fitz have done, and I'd be a tiny bit sceptical of it, saying, well, when you have attacking potential, say, look, utilise that as best you can. Certainly I see how being tight at the back and not conceding scores is vitally important. But part of me would like to be a fly on the wall in those dressing rooms and say, is there something that I could learn from that? And I think you have to be open to that. I still think the traditional thing of getting the basics right and having your hurling brain engaged at all times when you get on the pitch is vitally important. But for me, looking in, is there something that I would take from maybe how Waterford have set up over the last couple of years, or Wexford or the Clares that sometimes play with the sweeper or the extra man at the back? I think so. I think, you look at even Cork at the moment, they play with 3 in midfield, 3 in the half forward and 2 in the full line, and how important the goalkeeper is now. So there's massive aspects. There's a lot of stuff from all different ranges of resources and I think maybe you'd be foolish to zone in on one. So I'd be very much open to that. And obviously I have my own ideas on how it should be, but it comes back to being able to execute the fundamentals of the game, the basics of, one quick touch, it's in your hand, it's secure under pressure and under fatigue, and trying to get players to train exactly as they're going to play when they get on the pitch.
It's Eddie Brennan cutting his teeth with the Laois senior hurlers, cutting his teeth in senior intercounty hurling. Obviously, a bit of coaching pedigree already there in his background. It's going to be interesting to see the transition from that great Kilkenny team to coaching, and how many of them end up putting their hat in the ring for ultimately what happens post Cody.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the next one in, but then it's not quite the same GAA, is it? Because it's not professional, so it doesn't actually matter if you're the next one in.
No, that there is some sort of remnants of the greatness still around there. It doesn't take like a whole staff with him. The structures are still in place, sort of thing. Yeah, definitely.
And also, it's not like he's coming off a 4 in a row or a 3 in a row. It's like, we've got to start again.
Yeah, get him at a bit of an ebb. Eddie Brennan is definitely in pole position though, isn't he? If Brian Cody was replaced tomorrow with a Kilkenny man, it's Eddie Brennan, isn't it? I know, like in the context of right now, in reality, Eddie Brennan's just taking the Laois job, so it's not him, but like he's next up, top of the queue.
Henry Shefflin, managing his club team.
Yeah. Does he not need to do a bit of inter-county underage? Inter-county with another county?
If you're Henry Shefflin,
there is that.
You can ring
Eddie Brennan's a pretty big profile as well, though.
No, he is totally. But like, you can ring any coach in the country. If you're Shefflin, go, I want you to coach my team. You can get the best backroom team. Like Shefflin's story is not the story of somebody who was born preternaturally gifted. Like, he wasn't dribbling past everybody in the street at the age of 3. He was somebody who worked his balls off to become the most consistent and best hurler in the country. Like, that's the type of character stuff that you can be the leader of a team and just instill into them by going, look, I had to work hard to win my 10 All-Ireland medals.
Well, everybody's got to work hard to win 10 All-Ireland medals.
Yeah, but like he actually... So
he didn't work hard for 10 All-Ireland medals.
Well, so DJ Carey was naturally gifted, like had a natural gift that clearly he worked very hard on, but didn't have to didn't have to do as much hard work, had time, for example, to play handball, had time to do loads of other stuff in a way that Henry Shefflin didn't. Like, Henry Shefflin went to college and hadn't made underage teams in Kilkenny, hadn't been a guaranteed nailed-on starter, whereas like DJ was a teenage superstar from the age of 15. People were travelling around the country to go and see him play.
There's a certain pressure to that as well, though.
There is, but that doesn't... I'm saying that his characteristics transfer very, very quickly to senior county management.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit of football, because there's been some mental stories really over the past couple of days. I'm not sure if you've seen what's going on at Sunderland at the moment, but Papi Gillybogy and Didier Ndong are gone from the club. Let's start with the Gillybogy situation here. A statement released by Sunderland that they've given notice under its contract with Papi, who was under contract to Sunderland until June 2020, indicated in June 2018 that he wished to leave the club. So in order to facilitate that desire, the club entered into a written agreement with the player allowing him to spend the month of July on voluntary unpaid leave. When that period came to an end, the player was expected to leave for a new club, having reached a deal satisfactory to himself and Sunderland, or to return in shape to play professional football. Instead, he returned to Sunderland over a month later in the first week of September, ignoring written requests for his return. On his return, he was subjected to the same fitness test that his fellow professionals had undertaken on their return, and this is the best line in it: he comprehensively failed that test. I do wonder how comprehensive the failure was in his failure. Like, if I was to go in and do a fitness test to join a football club, would I comprehensively fail it on the same level, or does comprehensively fail that means you just had a few too many margaritas during the summer?
That kind of heavy breathing after the first... no, hang on, we've just started. I haven't
just walked in the door. So he's gone. He just didn't show up for training. Came back a month late. Fair enough. Didier Ndong is an interesting one, because this is sort of still developing at the moment.
They didn't remind you that they paid €9.5 million for €9.5 million for Gillybogy to Chelsea.
He used to play for Chelsea.
Yeah.
So Sunderland currently don't know where Didier Ndong is. So he didn't return to training in July either. And last week, or a couple of days ago, he posted photos of his Instagram account of him like chilling by a pool, which isn't exactly the smartest idea if you're trying to hide from your football club. And I don't think there was too many exotic locations in the Sunderland that had kind of a look at this particular swimming pool. A couple of comments on his Instagram post, which he posted on that occasion, saying, "You have lots of money, but you cannot buy class. You're very poor. You are a disgrace." And then another person saying, "You are without doubt the shittest professional footballer I've ever seen. Hope you never play football professionally again." So that person wishing him well in his amateur career.
18 million they paid for Didier Ndong.
Oh my God.
Back in the
From
day.
Hull, wasn't it?
From Lorient.
Oh, from Lorient.
Yeah.
That's obviously ridiculous, but like, it's a double relegation peril of all of this, and the idea that Ndong and Gillybogy are just like, nah, I'm not coming.
One of the things they're trying to do is to sue them for diminishing their own value, and they're using the Adrian Mutu case as somebody who ended up getting sued by Chelsea. But Mutu's case is completely different, because he ended up failing a drugs test for cocaine, and so they were like, well, hang on, you've cost us about 18 million quid here. We spent all that money on you as a transfer, and now we can't get it back. And this is just the two lads decided, I'm not playing football for that crap team in that city, in that shitty division.
Yeah, or maybe they were devaluing their actual value.
But it's an accidental kind of... from the, I don't really want to work for you anymore. Okay, so I have tickets to the All-Ireland Ladies Football Finals to give away. We have multiple pairs of these. All you have to do to enter this is to like us or retweet the stream, or to leave a comment on any of the streams, and just tell us that you're interested in heading along to what now is going to be a brilliant triple header on Sunday. We are looking ahead now to the final. Owen was joined in the studio yesterday by former Dublin goalkeeper Clean O'Connor, and on the line by freelance journalist, former Cork player Lisa Crowley, to preview the game. Have a look.
All right, in the Women's Championship, it's finals weekend. This weekend is Dublin against Cork in the big one at 4 o'clock. Clean O'Connor is in studio with me. Good afternoon to you, Clean.
Hiya.
So looking at this game, looking at the markets, Dublin are going to hammer Cork by all accounts. Is this what's going to happen?
Well, obviously it's a dub. That's why I'm definitely hoping it's going to happen. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as easy as that, to be honest. I think a lot will depend on how Dublin turn up in the day. A lot will depend on how efficient Cork are. It could be... Like, I think it's either going to be really tight or Dublin are going to win well. I don't think we're going to see the other way around. I don't think we're going to see a Cork hammering Dublin.
Is that because of a mental thing for Dublin, that if it's tight, if it's in the pressure cooker situation, that they're able to push through?
I think this team has evolved, and the new coaching staff around this team has evolved and brought them to a different level. I think getting a final last year and beating Mayo, and don't forget, like, everyone talks about the Cork-Dublin history. There's a lot of history between Mayo and Dublin as well. Like, there's quite a distinct rivalry between those two teams. So I think their comprehensive victory in last year's final will stand to them. And I also think that they're a lot better prepared, quite simply. I mean, looking back at some of the losses we had to Cork previously when I was playing, and even when I wasn't playing, from watching the sidelines, it definitely looked like when the pressure came on the team, sometimes it seemed like there was an absence of a specific plan. What are we going to do? You know, it wasn't as simple as just get out there and win the breaking ball. You know, that doesn't work if you're 2 points down in All-in final or whatever. You need very specific things that you're going to do when these situations arise.
And that's definitely not the case with Mick Bohan. We've all seen it with the documentary. It's one of these rare scenarios where we know exactly how he operates, how detailed he is, and how precise he is in the build-up. He actually said during the week that the A versus B game this week might have been the toughest fixture for a lot of them this summer. Fair play to him for calling it as it is. The thing I read from that is also, when you talk about if it's a tight game, Dublin will win, that off the bench they're unbelievably strong because their A versus B games are so tough at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of managers say that anyway. You know, your training is so tough and everyone's fighting for places, and sometimes that isn't actually the case. But I do think another way that this team has evolved, if I look back at previous years, we might have had a good 15, maybe a good 17. Sometimes we didn't have a really depth or great depth on the bench, just different years being as it was. And sometimes people who were on the bench were kind of disillusioned or a little bit disconnected. I think what Mick and the other coaching staff, and I know some of them quite well, what they've achieved, all the subs there is a really good hunger from your 15 to 25 or 16 to 25 that is pushing it on. That's something that's changed, I think, within the Dublin setup.
Yeah, we will talk a little bit more about the evolution and tactically as well in a couple of moments. I just want to say hello to Lisa Crowley. Good morning to you, Lisa.
Morning, how are you?
Not too bad. Thanks a million for taking the call. So, as I was just saying to Cliona a moment ago, the market is suggesting that this is going to be an easy afternoon for Dublin. I dare say you don't agree with that.
Oh no, I don't think down in Cork that we'd be too inclined to agree with that. I think no doubt they're favourites, and I think, they've really earned that title now. And it's probably unusual for Cork to be going into a All-Ireland final as underdogs. But I think it actually might suit this crop of players coming in. So no doubt it's going to be a fantastic game of football.
Why do you say it's going to suit them?
I think, I suppose they've so many All-Irelands accumulated over the last few years. But if you look at this panel, I think I did a stat during the week there that 13 of them have no All-Irelands while 17 have 67. So I think there's a brilliant mixture of youth and experience there. And I think, coming in as slight underdogs, I think it suits the younger girls because they know they kind of have nothing to lose going out there on Sunday. And, Dublin have really led the charge for the last year or two. So I think they're almost chomping at the bit to just get out there and, see how they fare against, the top team in ladies football at the moment.
Yeah.
To be honest, in some ways, Lisa's right. There is less pressure on Cork, because new players and come out and show what you can do, and there's no pressure on you, whatever. I mean, if you look at the Dublin side of things, we won in 2010 against Tyrone. We went out the next year, we couldn't beat Cork. They won last year against Mayo. They're going out this year. Can they beat Cork?
So, do you view that as a big disappointment that you didn't get that job done against Cork?
Oh, big time.
If that was Cork, say in 2010, would that have made it a lot more special?
It would have changed it a little bit,
Sure.
It is a bit of a niggle for those of us who were involved that had so many near misses or whatever. So, I mean, in some ways, there is more pressure on Dublin. Can they defend? Are they a one-hit wonder again, or can they go out and put two in a row?
In terms of this Dublin team, just in terms of the hoodoo that Cork have had over them for so many years, that it's not just a back-to-back for Dublin that's going to change things. It is also the fact that it is Cork.
Absolutely, and I think, that's a massive factor for Sunday. When I first saw that it was Dublin and Cork in an All-Ireland final, that's what you're thinking about straight away. Dublin have played Cork now, I think, in 4 All-Ireland finals since 2009, and they lost 3 of them by 1 point. They lost another by 2, and, a lot of the time they were in the driving seat in those games. So I think this will be the telling sign, like, are Dublin a great team, or, were they a flash in the pan? Like, can they beat Cork on Sunday? And I think that's going to be massive, like.
It's actually, I think you're right in terms of it will be it signify a change in the Dublin team if they can put back to back together. And I was thinking back at some of those other matches we played against Cork, that often we were in the driving seat, that we would have we'd start really well, and we'd get ahead and everything would be looking great. But when you look back on it, often in the first half Cork were missing. They were missing shots, and I remember standing in Croke Park and thinking, Jesus, they've hit 5 wides now, and we're 10 minutes in the game. But fast forward then to the last 10 minutes, the really important 10 minutes, and they rarely missed. And I was thinking about the Cork semi-final against Mayo last year. There's no doubt whatsoever that this Cork team will keep attacking. They will not give up, we know that. But last year against Mayo in the semi-final, they kept attacking, but it was execution. There was one stage where someone had like an open goal and missed it, and a few, and maybe that's the difference, maybe because 5 or 6 years ago, you had exceptional players who, under pressure, would execute. In the last 5 minutes of the game, when it was a level game, they'd put it over the bar. And maybe that is where this current crop of players just has to evolve. They maybe don't have that execution under pressure yet. There's no doubt about it, they'll keep going.
Yeah.
They've got that culture with them, that never say die thing. But it'll be execution under pressure. And that's why I think that maybe, if it's a tight game, that might stand in Dublin's favour. Yeah,
the thing also helps Dublin hugely in this regard is just the volume of shooters that they have, the mix of scores that they've gotten, they've shown all season.
Yeah, definitely. Again, their forward line has greatly improved. I think just the number of people who are putting scores on the board, which is always a great sign. Whereas previously we might have been relying on Sinead Ahern or Lindsay Davey or whatever, but now there's much more people who are bringing more attacking threat to the table, really.
Well, like Sinead, of course, is still flying this summer, obviously, as well. What was it, 2-4 in the semi-final, was it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing when you look at Cork, and like in the context of the semi-final, Lisa, and I know a lot of us will read a lot into the semi-final because it was on TV, we saw the full match and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do wonder, the way Donegal set up that day, it was almost reminiscent of Jim McGuinness. It was a blanket defence.
Yeah.
I think they played 3 forwards that day, Donegal, in the end, and Cork had to figure their way around this mass defence in quite a defensive setup. And ultimately, no matter what you planned for, no matter what you're doing in training, coming up against that Donegal defence was not something that Cork were too used to this season, and they managed to figure that out. Does that give you hope in terms of figuring this Dublin defence out?
Absolutely. I think, Donegal was a strange game. It was very frustrating to watch from the sideline because you felt that Donegal were going out to not lose as opposed to win. And, to be fair to them, they absolutely frustrated the Cork forwards. But as you said, we did get a lot of confidence from the fact that Cork were able, they were patient on the ball. They found holes when they needed to, they got in for those 2 goals. And I think, it was probably the first real test they've had this summer. And I think especially their backline has come under a little bit of scrutiny. And, they really stood up. Now, I know Donegal only played 2 or 3 forwards, but still the calibre of those forwards are exceptional. And I think the likes of Roisin Phelan at full back, they're going to take massive confidence coming into the game on Sunday. And I think, they're going to expect that I think Cork and Dublin are quite similar in that they both like to attack. So I think, they're going to be very prepared for that. And they know that it's going to be an open game of football. But I think hopefully they will have taken a lot of confidence from the Donegal game, even though Sunday will definitely be a lot different setup.
Lisa, do you think that they've been tested? Do you think that Donegal was that big of a test? I mean, I think you're right. It was. Yeah. They were kind of stuck it out and were patient and did what they needed to do to win the game. But I don't personally think Dublin have been tested that much so far this year. And I'd maybe suggest the same about Cork, but I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with you. Probably the Munster Championship. They played Tipperary, they were a little bit nervous, but they were never under any doubt they were going to lose that game. And it's kind of been the same way all the way through. I think in terms of the semi-finals, absolutely. I don't think Dublin have been tested at all this year. I think Cork got a little bit more of a test off Donegal, but ultimately, I think, they never looked like losing that game. Yeah. So, it's hard to know. I think Cork and Dublin have just kind of been so front of the pack this year. So I don't think either have really been tested. So it's hard to know how Cork will fare against this Dublin side because, Cork are a little bit there's a couple of new players in there. It's a little bit of a different setup, whereas Dublin are far more established over the last few years.
Yeah, I think they are. They've grown a little bit more after the last 2 or 3 years. But I definitely think, like a bit like what you're saying about the Cork game against Donegal, like watching the Dublin Galway game, like I just didn't think Dublin were ever going to lose it after about 5 minutes.
Absolutely not. No,
it just wasn't. It wasn't a decent test for them.
It is the one trend I think this year though from Dublin, and this is very much clutching to straws, where they had a lead at half time and the opposition won the second half. And I know that's such a cliche when you're in at half time and you're 7 points out. It's like, get out there and win the second half. But like, say, the Kerry game, they absolutely slaughtered them in the second half. Like, they completely enhanced their lead. Like, while I have you both on the line, it would be stupid not to ask about the goalkeeping situation. Ciara Transkleena, how important has she been to Dublin this season? When you mentioned the evolution at the start, do you talk about her evolution this year? Has she been a much more potent part of the game plan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I was sort of finishing up with Dublin, Ciara was sort of coming onto the scene, and I think she's just become a much better goalkeeper over the last 2 or 3 years. She's become way more confident. She's kind of commanding her defence. I mean, you're talking about cliches. That's to me, that's a massive job of the goalkeeper. It's 70% of it. Are you managing what's happening in front of you really well? And our kickouts are going better than they've gone before. So I think it's just, I suppose, growing into the position and making it our own. And I just think as a Dublin player off the pitch even, and on the pitch, what she delivers on the pitch, she's just really grown into a leader in the team. So that's got to settle the back line down.
Lisa, how important is it to stop transit the weekend?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, she's been phenomenal over the last couple of years. It's very rare you see her make any mistakes, and that's a sign of a good goalkeeper when they're not really making any headlines. I think Cork will probably have a plan for her kickouts, so I don't know, but I think they'll have to, because she sets up so much of that Dublin attack. Like, they move that ball at a ferocious pace from back to front. And I think that's going to be key for Cork to try and stunt that through the middle. And I think, that has to start with Trent. She can't be kicking out a ball very easy, just handing them possession. So I think that's going to be probably crucial to Cork trying to win. They have to try and stunt her kickouts.
And in fairness, I think actually that's something that Cork potentially are very, very good at. Just going on personal experience, that's something that they were able to do to us in those sort of second half periods when they were coming back on the attack. They really attacked our kick out, and it at times really unsettled us. So they have enough players who've been around and who know how to do that and who know how to go after that type of a setup. So I think if Dublin can manage that and not fall victim to that, it would be a massive step for them in terms of winning the game. Yeah,
and a massive step for Cork if they manage to succeed in stopping that. Is there anything else? Is that the most important thing, Lisa, or is there another thing that is the single most important thing for Cork to get right on Sunday to have a chance of actually beating this Dublin team?
Well, I think a good start is important for Cork, because I think predominantly, a little bit like Dublin, they've kind of been a second half team, and I would put that down maybe to a little bit of nerves. They're a young team, so sometimes they can play in patches. So I think we saw what Dublin did to Galway a couple of weeks ago. After 15 minutes, that game was over, and I think Galway were a little bit nervous, and Dublin just straight away went at them. So I think that's going to be very important. And as I was saying earlier, I think Dublin's running game is just phenomenal. I think Cork are going to have to stick with the runners. The Dublin forwards come in like an express train off the shoulder, and I think Cork kind of failed to do that when they met in the league, and it opened them up. So I think no doubt there's going to be goals on Sunday, but I think sticking with the runners is going to be very important for Cork to try and keep in the game and not just let it be a free for all in the back line.
Yeah, but I get the sense that you reckon they've got one hell of a chance on Sunday. I'm not going to ask for predictions because we can probably guess who you're both going for. Just one final thing instead of a prediction, then, Cleena, in terms of a potential dynasty, and I know it's they've just done one in a row, but we love to get carried away when it comes to sport. It's what we do best. How reminiscent is this Dublin team of that great Cork team back in their very early days? Do they have the sort of distance between the rest like that Cork team did in the early days?
It's very hard to make that comparison straight away. Sure. I mean, what that Cork team had, I suppose, was just sustainability, and it was all over the pitch, and it was year after year, and they just grew and grew and grew. And they had consistency, massive consistency with manager, consistency with players. I don't know, like, there's no doubt about it. Mick Bowen and the management team around him have done an incredible job, and they've changed a lot of our problems that we had, or they've addressed a lot of our problems that we had. Like, we were doing a lot of things right, but they've kind of, the things that were holding us back, they've managed to address them. So a lot of it will depend on, I think, what happens from a coaching side. There's no doubt about these Dublin players have talent, they have ability, they have all of those sort of things. They have hunger, they're carrying themselves well off the pitch, they're not getting too carried away off the pitch. So I think it is, whatever environment that has been created, can that be kept going? Or will a new manager come in next year or the year after and then starting again?
Well, that's the big question. And Bowen obviously himself has been linked to a couple of jobs, but that's a story for another day. We may not be talking about it at all, Lisa. You've got plenty of dressing room raw material there anyway, plenty of motivation there from a Cork supporter.
Yeah.
You've been written off left, right and centre, certainly for me. I'll put my hands up there. Thanks a million for taking the call, Lisa.
No bother. Thanks a million.
Just one last very quick question. 46,000 was the attendance last year. It's such a thing that's attached with these finals, what the attendance is.
Yeah.
Can it be matched on Sunday?
I think so. I think because Dublin are in the final, just because of the proximity of the fans, it can be matched. And I think ladies football, it's getting better. I think the Cork-Dublin saga will draw a bit of attention. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, let's hope so. Cliona, thanks a million for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it'd be great if that rivalry kicked off properly over the next couple of years. Amazing stat there that you were talking about, that 13 of the Cork players have no All-Ireland medals.
Yeah, it was on Lisa's Twitter there. I'll get it up here now in a sec. Just to give you the exact one.
In the meantime, if you want some tickets, we have tickets to give away to that game on Sunday. It looks like there could be more than 50,000 people at that game. Just a reminder that 49,000 showed up for the All-Ireland football semi-final between Monaghan and Tyrone and Cork, and there's going to be 50 at the All-Ireland football final, it looks like, potentially on Sunday. I mean, obviously they're going to need a big enough walk-up crowd. Yeah, the thing is, obviously Mayo last year would have boosted that number. The fact that Cork were in the Camogie last year, will that hit the attendance this week? Hopefully that clubs will get buses together and that won't impact things too much, because there's a good crossover in terms of dual players and stuff like that, in terms of dual fans, I should say. But just that stat there from Lisa Crowley, one on Twitter. 13 of the current Cork panel have 0 Senior All-Ireland titles, and the other 17 have 67 Senior All-Ireland medals between them, which is the very definition of a blend of youth and experience, I think. Graham Mulcahy didn't get nominated for Hurl of the Year. Some joke. Where's Graham Mulcahy for Hurl of the Year? And the Dow for an All-Star, says Martin Waters, and Stephen Heagney on Twitter for us with that one. We're going to hear a little bit more about the process of change in the FAI from Dan McDonnell. He was on the radio show last night on News Talk. We're going to hear from Craig Breen, who's been taking part in the new Turkish rally a little bit later on as well. And we're also going to talk about Conor McGregor. We missed on the front of one of the newspapers, notorious. It was one of the tabloid headlines today. McGregor taking a case against a brewer, I think maybe the Carlo Brewing Company, who have a notorious beer, and he was like, hang on, I've got notorious whiskey coming out, you can't be having these two things. He lost the case, and he's going to have to pay €638 for it. It's going to be broke. We're not going to see any gold chains around Conor McGregor's neck anytime soon. I mean, Tony could pay that with coinage alone, right? Coinage alone. I hope they do pay it in change. Just like stand at the dart and buy multiple tickets for €20 notes and just take the remainder of the change and go to wherever, Spain, or I think the case was heard in Spain. I'm not sure, was it McGregor suing them, or was it vice versa? I think they were just like pissed off at the idea that like you can't come up with a whiskey called Notorious. We have a beer called Notorious, and fair play to them for standing up for themselves. It's a good win for the smaller man. McGregor then posted yesterday talking about his malt whiskey and how it's going to be ready soon and all that sort of stuff. I think to actually get legalised to produce whiskey in Ireland, it's got to ferment or whatever for 2 years, or whatever maybe not ferment is not the correct verb, but it's got to sit there for 2 years at least. Conor McGregor can't just turn around and produce whiskey. You can buy it, that's the thing. Buy it and take the label off and put his own face on it. That's what most whiskey is actually all produced by the same. Most of the Irish whiskey that is exported is all just a different bottle and a different label. Yeah, and the same whiskey in there. And the same goes for a Tesco value for 13 quid, right? Thank you for justifying my drinking habits. Let's move on. Let's talk about the stunning start at international management of Luis Enrique. A 6-0 win for Spain against Croatia. And I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Graham. Frozen in the ether. We'll try again. I think we can just about hear you there. Hey, Graham.
Yeah, no, I'm here. Perfect. I'm here. I can hear you, and Vision is gonna return any second now. How about that?
Boom.
I must be I must be there, am I?
I think so, yeah.
I didn't like the link. I didn't like the link because the last words of coming out of the last item were drinking habits. And then let's go on to Graham. It's after so many years of friendship, lads, it's unnecessary. And listen, I'm also not the type of pundit who's going to say anything like I told you so about Luis Enrique, because this is an odd, awkward man. And along the way, there will be bumps, there will be fallouts. It was ludicrous that he dropped Jordi Alba from the squad. That looks very personal. And yet, the one thing that was just crystal clear from the moment that Julian Lopetegui was sacked until these first two games of Luis Enrique's career, Spain had to rediscover their personality. There's no Iniesta, Xavi, Puyol, Villa now. Fine. But Spain was a system. Spain's academies teach players to take risks, to have the ball for a good reason. Over the years, the three of us, your listeners, various different presenters on this show have talked about, well, is Spain's position boring or sterile or interesting or technically brilliant? How do you want to call it? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But what you couldn't argue was they used possession in order to win. They'd stopped doing that. In the World Cup, as opposed to the rabid raving dog you used to get when you taunted me by saying on off the ball morning or night, well, there are some people that think Spain style's a bit boring. And I used to go mad and say, well, take their television licenses off them. Prevent them from watching football anymore. Well, in Russia, they were sterile. They exited that World Cup in a cloud of indifference, a cloud of risk-free boredom. And boy, oh boy, in Elche the other night, setting aside Spain winning, setting aside the World Cup finalists being destroyed, setting aside Luis Enrique, the debuts, that was football that explains what we do for a living. That was football that explains why people are passionate about this sport around the world, of any age, any race, creed, colour, gender. It doesn't matter. That was orgasmic football.
It's very strange to see, I think, any manager get his name sang in one of their first games, particularly at international level, particularly when it comes to the Spanish national football team. Have you ever seen anything like this instant gratification from the crowd towards a Spanish national manager?
Probably not, given that, Aragonés was absolutely chased around the country by his critics. Vicente Del Bosque engenders affection, gentle affection. Lopetegui didn't engender anything like Luis. The answer's no. But I think the chant prior was, we want our football back. We want to be able to enjoy the game. We're embarrassed about the way things are going on the pitch. There was a huge loss of interest in terms of the viewing audience and the Spanish national team. It was becoming difficult to sell games out. First of all, not only were they pretty pleased with Luis Enrique for playing two local boys, Saúl and Gaia. Both have their roots in that part of the world. It's down the southwest of Spain, very close to Alicante. And there was a huge affection for that because it's a ceremony when Spain play. Luis Rubiales, the president, on coming to Wembley, did that interview, I think, with Sid Lowe, saying, yeah, I'm a bit envious in a healthy way of Wembley. A national stadium, yeah, wouldn't that be great? But never going to happen. One, we won't spend that money. He said, two, the Spain team belongs to everybody in our country, and therefore we have to take it round the country. When they do that, the positive is little places like Elche, who haven't had an international match for 11 years, go mental. And there's two local boys in the team, and we beat the World Cup finalists. Little wonder that there's a bit of affection towards Luis Enrique. But the sad side, when Spain became sterile, and certain footballers who are still in this team, lads, stopped working so hard, stopped trying so hard, started putting club victories ahead of international victories. I'll name him. Sergio Ramos. Terrible World Cup. And there were reasons behind the scenes for him not playing at the form we were used to at Real Madrid. And that pendulum has swung back. There's been a slap in the face from the manager. He's told the players, you just won't last a day if you don't follow my rules. There won't be second chances. And he is that stern. He is that gruff. Listen, 6-0 up and playing very well. And even though Croatia gave up for half an hour, it's a beautiful win. All his bets have come off. His debutants have scored. He makes Asensio have his best game in a red shirt. Carvajal, best game in a red shirt. Sergio Ramos, back, paying attention. Luis Enrique stomped past me in the flash interview zone in the tunnel. as soon as he's shaking hands with the Croatia coach at the end of the match, and his face was grim. You'd think he'd lost his favourite Alsatian dog. His pet tortoise had gone for a wander, never found him again, dropped a tenner. His face was thunder. The sports psychologist was in the flash interview, standing next to him, listening to every single word again. Luis Enrique, business continues, forget the scoreline. That probably happened at half-time when he knew he'd won. He's a very strange, demanding, intense man. He's Roy Keane without the crossing of cables in his head. That's the intensity level we're talking about. And therefore, the teams are a slap in the face. The captains are a slap in the face. And the football public are going, well, this is what we wanted all along. Welcome to Spain national team on duty, Luis Enrique. That's why you heard he was popular.
This is obviously pure conjecture, but is this a 2-year deal for him? Do you think it's actually, given that level of intensity, that is what will happen? Or could this be a proper 4-year thing that goes through to the Euros and lasts all the way to the World Cup?
I think that's his aspiration. One thing that you must never mistake about Luis Enrique is that he's in it to win it. Every hour, every day, every tournament. Nothing is ever given away. Nothing is ever a gimme. Yeah, he wants to win. And maybe this helps answer your question. The players post-Croatia, not post-England, said, they didn't say these have been 2 great results, 2 great games. They said, this has been a great week. This has been fun. We believe in each other. We work for each other. It's been fabulous being here. We spoke about needing to beat these 2 teams who'd finished higher in the World Cup than us, and we didn't like it. We spoke about specifically not winning to get 3 points or get through to the finals next summer, but winning to put our house in order. Now, that's a very Luis Enrique thing. So they want to win this opening Nations League thing next summer. They want to host it and win it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's early days. But after that, as long as he won't burn out in a year. You know, this is the least stressful job he's had in management because you get time off in between. He's got a gigantic team of helpers who he adores and who definitely help him. And imagine that. The sports psychologist, some people make a mistake and think he's a guy who's using sports psychology in the squad. It's for him. Every hour of every working day, he and his Joaquin Valdez are working out, what do we say? How do we act? How did that go? Let's review it. How should I act to him, to this guy? Now that's intense and that's a key, a symbol of what he believes in. But he's got gaps. So therefore, I think he'll see it through to the summer. I think he'll stay to the to the next tournament. Yeah, the 2020 European Championship. I think his objective is to win that. Do I see him being in charge for 8, 9, 10 years? Absolutely not.
Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, fellas.
It's Graham Hunter enjoying his morning coffee on the streets of Spain.
Yeah. Will we talk a little bit about John Terry?
Go for it, yeah. I mean, it was announced in the papers that he was off. It was done. It was a done deal. I was like, wow, that would be an amazing documentary, John Terry's Russia.
It would be. Obviously, he didn't get it over the line.
Palin.
What?
The new Michael Palin.
He's 37 years old, free agent, as you say. He was off to Russia. Spartak Moscow were in for him. And they were about to make a big announcement. And he did a U-turn. And this is his Instagram post, which is an interesting one. He kind of put up an Instagram story, screenshotted it, and then accompanied it with the exact caption that is listed in the photo. But anyway, after considerable thought, I have decided to decline a contract offer from Spartak Moscow. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Spartak and wish them and their supporters well for the rest of the season. They are an ambitious club, and I have been very impressed with their professionalism. But after assessing this move with my family, we've decided this is not the right time for ourselves. This is not the right move for ourselves at this time. Good luck, Spartak. So the dream is over for John Terry and his family to actually move to Russia. He went and actually did a medical in Rome the other day, so maybe Spartak flew him over to Rome for the medical, and he was like, I got my free trip to Rome, I'm going back home. So I wonder, is he going to go back to your beloved Aston Villa?
Well, that's the thing. Apparently Villa are straight in for him. We're like, yeah, come on, let's go.
We just had Graham on there talking about Spanish football, and of course Spanish football would never be linked to anything untoward, except for now when Denis Cheryshev and his father has thrown him under the bus. So speaking to a Russian publication last year, Denis Cheryshev's father, who of course was the World Cup hero for Russia, said that Villarreal staff had administered a growth hormone to treat an injury, But later, and which I imagine is kind of now since this whole stuff is blown up, he said he meant to refer to a legal substance growth factor and was misunderstood. So lost in translation there, a Russian footballer has been accused of using human growth hormone. Of course, there is no indication of any wrongdoing here. It's merely Denis Cherishev's father speaking a little bit out of turn. The other big story this morning, Jerome, possibly the biggest story of the year, is that EA Sports FIFA chiefs believe that Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi are rated exactly the same. They've both got a 94 rating in next year's FIFA 19. Ronaldo, number one in the list here. A few little statistics going in his favour. We should have got Graham's take on that, actually. Lionel Messi no longer the number one FIFA player. It's the first time we've ever seen them ranked at the very, very same. Neymar in at number 3 at a rating of 92, and then a host of players rated at 91. Modric, De Bruyne, Hazard, Ramos, Suarez, De Gea, and then Toni Kroos completing the top 10 at 90. So that's a bit of FIFA knowledge for you this morning.
Here's the new FIFA 19 no rules mode in action. This is from our friends at Copa 90. So what's the point of this? What's no rules mode on?
You can basically set the rules whatever you want, as in no fouls. You can go offside, as you can see here. Well, this is actually kind of an exact replica of whatever Arsenal. This is like Aubameyang, who loves to roam in that position. So Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang will be delighted with the no offsides rule that you can set on FIFA. Arsenal taking a 2-0 lead there in Tottenham as well, which is another bizarre sort of thing I've seen this morning. So you can do whatever you want. If you just want to get a bit of anger out there, you want to kick the living daylights out of your opponent, you can do that now, if that's something that interests you.
Were they not rated the same always? Who was always one over the other? Was it always Messi over Ronaldo? Is this...
I think so. Tommy in the box would have a greater knowledge of this, but...
I mean, you're a FIFA world expert, as we all know from your shitty FIFA team up there.
Well,
you can't see it.
That FIFA team is going to age well, I'm telling you.
No Messi in your team. What's going on? What kind of a clown are you?
And who's the number 2 player in the world in FIFA right now? I've got the number 1 player in FIFA on my EA Sports FIFA team right there. So, yeah, no, I think Messi's always been the market leader. People have to get used to this idea of a fading Lionel Messi. It's not happened just yet dramatically. Like, he did deserve to be on that World Player of the Year shortlist. But there's a little inkling of Lionel Messi just kind of losing his grace a tiny bit. But we won't go too much into that, because, as we know, people who hate on Lionel Messi get a lot of personal abuse on Twitter.
And they deserve it. So the FIFA no rules things, quickly, it's impossible to get sent off for hard tackling, and also gets rid of the famously beginner-unfriendly offside rule. I mean, an offside rule in computer games was one of the most annoying things of all time. It's like, oh, come on.
Why?
Because, like, you have to toggle the control to make sure that your people are onside.
What?
It's a pain in the hole.
You don't really, though. Like, what year was that? Like, it's usually automated.
I mean, it wasn't always. And another option when activated means that only headed or volleyed goals get counted.
That's a good one. That is a very good one. Yeah, so you can like toggle. If you want violence, if you want headers and volleys, you can do that now in FIFA. There was a great actual rule in This is Football 2003. Robbie Keane was on the cover where you could dive. 2004. 2004, the FIFA game which you went off the ball control, yeah. But that was only that was only kind of if you didn't want to control your players to be onside, you didn't have to do that. But anyway, This is Football 2003. You could actually dive with your players, which I thought was fantastic opportunity to set an example for young potential footballers who are playing video games. You dive in the box and quite often you get a penalty.
So not only are computer games ruining actual sport by preventing kids from going out and playing, they're teaching them how to chew as well.
Yeah,
that's
great.
That's how you'd be spinning that one if you wanted to knock an hour of, Are you
going to write a think piece for offtheball.com about how...
incendiary daytime radio out of it?
Well, yeah, maybe there's a piece in all of that.
Text us now if you think the computer games are ruining people's lives.
Well, the thing that's going to ruin most people's lives is Lionel Messi being number 2 on the FIFA list, I think. I've seen some of the people out there.
Especially yours. Right, let's move on. So here's Dan McDonald talking about the glacial pace of change within the FAI.
John Delaney spoke in Cork a couple of weeks back about UEFA, where obviously at UEFA he's been co-opted onto the executive committee, and he was sort of speaking in relatively gushing terms about the new breed at UEFA. They've got Alexander Shefrin, the new president, who took over I think in 2016, and John Delaney spoke about the new people on the board, such as himself, I think David Gill, who has been around UEFA for longer, but still Gazidis from Arsenal and others. There's a new breed there running UEFA well, and really, I think, I mean, he may have a point. I mean, there are things happening with UEFA, reforms, discussions, new voices bring new angles and new energy and new ideas. And for example, last year, UEFA 2017 looked to introduce term limits for certain positions, so that actually, if you're a serving officer on the main board in UEFA, the max you can do is 12 years. Now, 12 years is still a fairly long time. It's 3-4 year terms, but it's at least there's a cap on it. So that's UEFA, and then you come back to Ireland, where 13 years ago. The decision was made to relieve or not renew Brian Kerr's contract by a 10-man board, 6 of whom are still on the board. And the only changes that have really happened in the intervening period were caused by the one place where there is firm limits is with regard to the president and the vice president, who have to do certain terms. So the changes on the board have basically been caused by people who were elsewhere on the board moving up to become president and vice president and then moving off.
Yeah, because that's our good quick potted history lesson there from Don McDonald about the FAI board. Let's move on. Craig Breen is obviously somebody that we've been following very closely over the last year or so here on the show, and he's been recording a bunch of diaries for us. You can check out all of the previous diaries on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball. Hit subscribe there, and we'll hit you up with some of the good stuff that we do across the week. But here he is talking about the brand new Turkish rally. Have a look.
Hi, Off the Ball. We're here in Turkey for the next round of the World Championship. It's a completely brand new rally. The rally is based in Marmaris. It was originally based in Istanbul in the past and some other places, but for this year it's back here in Marmaris. A really, really tricky rally. Some twisty roads, really hot temperatures. We've had up to 35, 36 degrees during the recce. The roads are really twisty, really rough, and it's going to be a big challenge. Not quite the sprint like the other rallies, but this one will take a little bit of thinking, so we're looking forward to it. The recce's gone really well. We've got the shakedown on tomorrow morning, followed by the super special tomorrow evening, so all the preparations so far have been good. I haven't driven the car on gravel since Finland. The last time I was in the car was on the tarmac in Germany, so it'll take a couple of runs tomorrow to knock the cobwebs off, but we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. We're going to be checking in with Craig over the next couple of days, and as I said, check out youtube.com/offtheball. Obviously he's going to be filing those videos for us, and we'll put them out live on social as well if you happen to miss OTB AM. Now, Off the Brawl, see what we did there? Is the brand new combat sports show from OTB, focusing on boxing and MMA. The podcast for the first episode is available now. We're going to be streaming the show later on tonight across all our channels and over at youtube.com/offtheball. Here's Andy Lee talking about his relationship with Gennady Golovkin and the amount of testing he's had before this fight.
And Golovkin's obviously on the last lap of his career now, but you've experience with him in the amateurs. You boxed him a while ago. Do you know there was something special on your hands when you were fighting him, or was it just another Eastern
I had no idea who he was, and I wasn't even aware that Kazakh were a strong nation in boxing, Kazakhstan, and it was second fight in the World Championships, and I was just did my best just to hang in there with him, I was getting hit and I didn't even know where the punches were coming from, he was an aggressive counter puncher as an amateur. He's kind of adapted his style now. He's more of a pressure fighter as a pro, but like you said, what's happened in between, it would only have benefited Canelo. This whatever was 6 months off. Yeah. Golovkin's had a fight in between that, so he's had another training camp and he's had another fight. So that's more wear and tear on an already long amateur and pro career. So I don't know, like the way I see Canelo winning the fight, the way things are going, like Golovkin's definitely been getting tired a lot more later in the fights. When you look at Danny Jacobs, how he came on strong towards the end, and even Canelo in that fight, like when Golovkin needed to push in that fight, it was Canelo who was pushing, down the stretch. But going back to the blood test and the drug test, and it kind of gets brushed swept under the car. It's kind of like in boxing anyway. Boxing's not as strict as other sports when it comes to bans and stuff like that, and
which is ridiculous. I know you've talked about it before. Like that, your life is
it's just
in jeopardy.
like there will be tested now. They've signed up for VADA in this, and I read that Golovkin has been tested 18 times since this fight has been signed. 12 urine tests and 6 blood tests.
Yeah.
So you'd.
All right, so you begin to have a little bit of faith in the testing ahead of this fight. That's Off the Brawl, which will stream live tonight, also featuring Niall. Niall, how are you?
Good, Jerry, yourself?
You made your debut in Off the Brawl because it was the first ever Off the Brawl. How was that?
Yeah, no, it was good, yeah, and looking forward to it. Andy was obviously great on his relationship with Triple G in the big fight this weekend. But yeah, looking forward to it. Lots, obviously, with the big fight coming up in a few weeks in Las Vegas in terms of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, so this is the start of the build-up, really, from the tabloids' perspective. It's like, how do we shoehorn McGregor in? Okay, he's lost the case for 630 quid, 620 euro. That'll do. Get his picture on the face, him drinking a glass of whiskey. No, Notorious. Is this the picture after he lost his...
That's the one from the Maymack fight, in Las Vegas.
So a bottle that night that actually said Notorious on it.
Yeah, we think so. Yeah, he was drinking from it. It looked like I couldn't really see. I was a bit far back, but yeah, you know, Conor. Any sort of time with a bit of camera on him, he'll promote his products.
Right. So, yeah. It was O'Hara's, who are from Carlo, who make loads of very nice beers, and so he's now going to have to pay 620 euro costs to the brewer for having lost the trademark case against him, because he obviously wanted to sell the Notorious whiskey. Bruiser Connor is on to a loser. Bruiser and loser. Yeah, okay, that rounds. He can't use Notorious. Far more importantly, though, the actual press conference to hype up this fight has been announced. There was some debate about whether or not McGregor was going to do any pre-fight promo, and I saw a piece from one of the financial journals recently saying that this is really bad for UFC because they need McGregor to come out. He is like a quick potted history. The UFC sells for billions. Turns out they don't really have that much control over the assets that they thought they had. They'd been building a bunch of new people who keep getting beaten, unfortunately, because they can't fix the fights the way they do in boxing. And suddenly, the last great cash cow they have is McGregor. And McGregor's like, well, I'm not sure I want to do all that crappy PR.
Yeah, I can understand from Conor's point of view why he doesn't want to do it. The fight has obviously only been announced 4 weeks ago, so it's not a quick turnaround for Conor. He hasn't fought in the octagon in 2 years. There's a lot of preparation going into his biggest challenge in mixed martial arts as well, against a guy like Khabib. He has to be in the gym, and Conor, for his mentality as well, when he's in the gym, he's at his best, and that's when he needs to be there. He doesn't need to be anyone to take him away, and I think the fact he's agreed to this one, it's 2 weeks out. He's on his way over to Las Vegas anyway for the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's been supposed to be going. They've put it off his camp. So once he's out there in America, I'm sure literally the day or two after he'll be straight down. I wouldn't expect too much more from Conor bar this press conference.
Do you buy the idea that he's managed to break his opponents down psychologically in the build-up to a big fight? Aldo is the obvious example, and can he do the same to Khabib?
Yeah, I think so. I'm really interested to see the dynamic between the two when we see them in New York next week. Has traditionally done that. Jose Aldo, martial arts, predicted that to be the case. And I think Khabib's a little bit different than anyone Conor's faced before in terms of his trash talk and how good he is at it. He's wonderful at it as well. He's had some classic one-liners, so I'm not sure it's going to work to the degree that it has in the past, but Khabib's cockiness, I think, might be the problem for him going into this fight. He's traditionally, I spoke to his coach a couple of weeks ago, Javier Mendez, and the problem with Khabib has been his lack of discipline in actually sticking to a game plan that his coaches have implemented. It's the cockiness and the brashness, the fact he's unbeaten as well. I think that's actually a bit of a disadvantage for him going into this fight because, I often, we saw it with Darren Till last weekend as well, a guy going into a world title fight, a young guy who's unbeaten. I think sometimes you have to, before you go into a world title fight, be beaten to understand that you can't be cocky, especially against a guy like Conor McGregor, who, listen, if Khabib wants to stand with him, I think there's only going to be one outcome, that's Conor McGregor.
But can he not be cocky in his own ability? Like, is there not part of you that goes and says, right, okay, I see your game, and I'm not going to do what happened with Jose Aldo, but actually I'm unbelievably cocky because I'm here on merit and I've built my career to the point where I can go, well,
yeah, you have to have a little bit of arrogance, but if you're ultimately disrespecting someone and their ability on the feet, and Khabib has done it. We've seen it against Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson hurt him in the stand. But Michael Johnson's nowhere near on the level of Conor McGregor.
So what happened in the Johnson fight then? Explain that.
Johnson clipped Khabib. He went to the ground, looked like he was rocked, looked like he was hurt. He recovered, overcame it.
And so Khabib, when you say disrespect, means he was cocky to the point of I can just stand here and trade fights.
He was, he took down Michael Johnson, was, working on Michael Johnson on the ground. trying to get a submission of Michael Johnson, but he was ultimately talking to Dana White in the corner, saying, give me a title shot, Dana. He spoke through the whole fight. You can hear him. And Javier Mendez, his coach, and his father were literally shouting at him, Habib, don't stand, don't trade. And the same in the Ally Quinta fight in Brooklyn there a number of weeks ago.
Did this not work for Khabib in the end, ultimately?
It does work for him, but it's a massive risk when you stand with Conor McGregor. And if he wants to do that, like Michael Johnson, he stood with Ally Quinta.
Well, let me. Okay, just
it's dangerous.
If you're strategizing on his perspective from their camp, you tell McGregor that you're going to be cocky and you're going to stand with him, and you can batter him with that, right? And then McGregor obviously is not dumb enough to think that that's what you're doing, but there has to be an element of bluff in this. It's like, and then the last thing you do is actually what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, I think so, but I think, knowing their coaches and knowing Javier Mendez, that's not the way his fighters fight. He likes his fighter being disciplined, but I'm not sure they really have the belief in Habib sticking to this game plan, and that's why I'm worried for Habib. I've got more worried as it's sort of gone on, because I've watched back the Michael Johnson fight, I've watched back the Ally Quinta fight, and I've heard what's been said in the corners, and his lack of, Habib, don't do this, Habib, don't do that. Conor's going to go out there and stick to a game plan. He's not going to slide off a game plan.
Is that a representation of Kavanagh? Like, if you compare Mendez and Kavanagh, is there a big upper hand there for John Kavanagh?
I don't think so, no. I generally don't think so. I think
you're on a similar level of coaching.
Yeah, I think, in terms of probably coaches, Javier Mendez will be, over the years, a more world-renowned coach. He's had guys like, Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, UFC two-weight world champions. So, lots of guys there in their stable and lots of experience. But I don't think it's really going to come down to I think someone's getting finished in this fight. That's how I feel about this fight. I don't think it's going to go to 5 rounds at all, but I just can't wait for this press conference to get more weight behind it.
You'd
it's
think
fascinating.
That the UFC are almost really disappointed at the moment, given from what you're talking about Khabib loving to trash talk as well, that they're not getting a press tour out of this, that they don't do a 3-day setup, because this is going to be pretty good.
I think so. I was a little bit disappointed when it was announced for October, because we're not going to have this mass build-up to sell the fight even further. And I think, that extra month or two, maybe Conor would have agreed to do a little, a few more numbers and maybe do a world tour. We've only the one, but listen, I think, we've all the footage from Brooklyn, the horrible incident that was there, but, the UFC are using that ultimately.
Yeah, come on.
It's no surprise.
That was the bit where you're like, come on. You don't need to use it in the ads. You can put those out. You can put spend behind it from
they're
like.
Always going to use it, Jeff.
But you can do it in a way that's not so naked. Like, come on.
That's Dana White. That's the UFC. That's the way they sell themselves. I know it is WWE-esque at times. It pisses me off. But let's be honest. People are going to look at that. They remember Brooklyn, and that's why a lot of people are tuning in.
I think the way the social media works is you can literally put $1 million behind that and make sure that everybody sees it and it not be associated with your brand. But now they're like, look, lads, the way to get a massive fight is to break into a building, fuck stuff at the side of a bus, break windows, like.
But I think I said that to you in Brooklyn after the fight. I think after the incident in Brooklyn, I think I said that to you. I said Dana White will probably change his mind 24 hours later, and we'd be looking at this, footage being used to sell a potential fight, and there it is. It's no surprise, I don't think, for people involved in what the UFC do. Let's be honest, Dana White's a pretty greedy and self-indulgent character. So
if I was like the marketing executive for UFC, the ad would have gone something like this. So it would have been a darkened room, and
thank God you're not.
And then suddenly a spotlight arrives on Dana White, and he's like, "We've come from a very dark past in the UFC. The nadir of the UFC was reached in the Barclays Centre last year, but we're an organisation of forgiveness. We're men of God. We forgive."
It's always darkest just before the dawn. A voice off,
and then a big epic bang, and Conor McGregor appears, says, "I'm sorry," and everybody's like, "That's amazing. They've come through this violent moments that threaten to derail this entire organisation. I really want to buy this fight and see the restitution."
Listen, the fight sales are going to go through the roof on this one. I think the UFC are easily going to break a record. Even with the lack of promotion that we've seen, I know we're seeing the press conference in 2 weeks' time. And listen, the amount of traction that press conference alone is going to get, when they start streaming that on YouTube, you watch the numbers, the internet's going to break for Conor McGregor. It's crazy.
Thankfully, it goes online just as Off the Ball ends that night.
Yeah, 10 o'clock. So tune into it after Off the Ball.
10 o'clock, which actually means like midnight when McGregor shows up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if he shows up, I wouldn't be surprised.
Really?
I know he'll show up. But it is, the interesting thing, it's actually closed to the public, and it's in Radio City in New York. And I think, maybe that has something to do with the authorities in New York as well, and maybe some agreements. They didn't want to put any fans in jeopardy. So I'm not 100% sure, but
get hit with
imagine, having such a big arena like that, rented for just media.
Yeah, it could be something to do with the stipulation from the court case.
Exactly.
All right. What stage are we at in the McGregor career? Like, is it possible he loses this fight and has a rematch, or is it possible he loses this fight and says, I don't really like getting punched in the head anymore, and I have 85 to 100 million quid, and actually my earning potential is not now connected to fights, it's connected to proper endorsements, like another Burger King, somebody else, and a few investments, and away I go. And the reason to get into this was to get rich, not to get beaten up.
Yeah, I think it's, since the Jose Aldo fight, people have been saying, is Conor going to come back? Is Conor going to come back? And he's kept coming back. I know we haven't seen him in the octagon in 2 years. I think we're more likely to see Conor come back if he wins the fight. I think if he loses the fight, not so much of an interest in coming back. But if I think he wins the fight and he wins in impressive fashion against Khabib, which is most likely the case if he is to win, it's going to be a knockout, in my opinion.
Is it not going to be?
There's more interesting fights. Like the UFC have put Tony Ferguson, who was obviously supposed to fight Khabib, back at UFC 223 in Brooklyn. That fight fell out the week beforehand. There's narrative. There's a little bit of distaste there with Conor and Tony as well. He's fighting a guy, Anthony Pettis, who's a former UFC lightweight champion. It's a fantastic, co-main event, and that's set up, I think, in order to create a narrative between the winner of the main event as well. It's there on purpose. It's there for a reason. So it is going to be interesting to see. But the UFC are going to have to splash the cash. It's simple.
Do we know
they need guys who are going to sell.
Do we know how much he's going to get for this? Is that like?
I would imagine 50 million plus dollars
for this fight, for the Khabib fight.
Yeah. So you'd be looking at probably in total 50 million. I'd say 30 million plus dollars from the UFC, then a pay-per-view cut as well on top. He'll get a percentage of that. So you'd be looking at up around $50 million. I would imagine.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well, then I can.
He's clearly getting more from the last time he got. I think it was the rumor was about $18 million US
for
the Eddie Alvarez fight. Then he fought Floyd. 2 years to get him back in. It's going to take a lot of money. Yeah. It's not around the ballpark figure that we was in the UFC the last time.
Yeah, okay. I mean, maybe that changes your motivation a little bit. It's like, do 2 more of these fights, and
the thing is, they need draws at the moment. There's not that many guys. Darren obviously losing last weekend, and I think, Dana's relationship with Tyron Woodley as well isn't great. I think it showed a lot. He didn't turn up for the post-fight press conference. That was a telling factor for me. Darren, it's obviously, a learning curve for him. He's 25. He's probably going to go to middleweight now. Well, I think he should go to middleweight. But they've no one really, they haven't, it's been their own fault as well to a certain extent. They haven't really put the weight behind certain guys they should have.
Yeah.
And
like you wonder,
they always focus on 1 or 2 at a time, like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Brock Lesnar.
Like, I know the UFC have moved beyond this point, but I do wonder, in the early days of McGregor, did Dana White view McGregor as sort of this conduit into the other side of the Atlantic? And I wonder, does he see Darren Till as a similar mechanism where it's like, if we lose Conor McGregor, then Darren Till suddenly becomes our biggest star across the pond? And does he use his pawns like that as a tool for exposure on that side of the Atlantic?
I wouldn't have had Darren fight for the world title last Saturday. It was his first fight on US soil. What they do is they'll have a guy on, a FS1 card, promote him a little bit, then put him on a pay-per-view.
Sure.
So, it was maybe a little bit rushed for me. Colby Covington sitting, waiting there. Didn't want to take the fight at the time. A very interesting character. If you know Colby, he's a gas man. But I would have just given it. Yeah, he's Donald Trump's friend. But I would have just given Darren a little bit more time to settle and, build him a little more. He's 25 years of age, very young for a fighter. But he's going to go to middleweight, I believe, now. And, this time is on Darren's side, so I expect still a big push from him in the coming months.
Briefly, just to go back to what type of fight you think it's going to be. Again, if you are strategizing and you're in Khabib's corner, what is your strategy?
What is my strategy? Get Conor to the deck and try and maul him. That's literally it. That's what he does. But I think in terms of what Conor, if he does get taken down by him, Conor doesn't want to try and get straight back to his feet. I think you need to attack Khabib, from your back with lots of elbows and things like that. And I think if it's sort of like, if you try to escape from Khabib, he's going to get you further and deeper into where he wants you to be. So 100% that's their tactics. Javier Mendez, as I said to you, I was speaking a few weeks ago, he said, we would be absolutely crazy to want to stand with Conor McGregor. And that's obvious. Conor is obviously a superior striker. So for Habib, it's get him to the ground. For Conor, it's literally stand and bang and try and knock him out. It's going to go one way or the other, and there's going to be a finish.
Is there, like, if it goes to the ground, that's when Khabib suddenly has more than a 50-50 chance?
Habib, if it goes to the ground and it plays out, if Conor isn't sensible about what he does in the deck, it's going to be a short night.
Right. So either way, you think
either way it's going to be a short night.
And also because neither of them really...
It's fascinating.
Do they both have the gas anymore for 5 full rounds?
I've always sort of, we look at Conor and we've seen his fights. He sort of fades sort of halfway through the fights a little bit. Habib's kind of the same. I think the weight cut is an issue that hasn't really been brought up as much as, I think it could be a big issue for Habib. He didn't look great, I don't think, the last time at UFC 223. He missed weight 2013. He did, he was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson a year and a half ago, fell out the night before because he had weight cutting issues. It could be an issue going into this fight, and I think Conor's a lot more comfortable than Habib at 155 pounds. It's no problem for Conor. That's not far off Conor's walking around weight. But Habib cuts a lot of weight.
Yeah. All right. No, good stuff. Thanks very much for that.
No problem. Pleasure.
We've got some sense of what's going to happen. Yeah, I don't know. The press conference, I hope he shows up. I hope that, is it going to sell at 2 million? I don't know if it's going to be this,
yeah.
Is it?
Definitely.
Why? What is everybody?
We've seen the bus incident. People have been talking about that with zero promotion for the last month and a half, ever since the fight's been announced.
Talk about the fight before the fight existed.
I was talking to guys in the office the other day. They're going, I can't wait for the fight. I can't wait. When is it? Are we going to see any promotion? The UFC released 3 promotional videos after the fight last Saturday. They obviously can't get a hold of Conor. That's the problem, because people are genuinely interested in seeing how this fight's going to play out, because Habib's unbeaten as well, 24-0.
And last point on that, is he not doing the promotion because there's a little bit of nagging concern in the back of his mind that it's been so long since he's been in the octagon, and that actually he's been fluting around having the crack, living the life, and that's not the same Spartan lifestyle which brought him to the pinnacle of his sport?
No, I genuinely don't think so. I think when Conor's back in the gym, he's at his best. You look at his Instagram, he's taking bags off walls and things like that. It's very impressive. It looks very impressive, and he looks in good nick ahead of this fight. And I don't think...
Everybody lives their best life on Instagram, though, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Check out Owen's Instagram.
I understand that, but he hasn't been in the papers really for the wrong reasons.
I've got
filters going on there, Owen. Yeah. But there's been no, there's been no issues.
But no WhatsApps.
But yeah, things like that, right? The WhatsApp, really. I'm sick of listening to WhatsApps after the last couple of months. But there's been no issues, in terms of negativity. In the papers for Conor, that says to me Conor's back.
He just lost a whiskey brand. He had to pay €630.
Oh,
all over
there
the
you go.
papers.
It's a pocket change.
He could still actually buy the brand from O'Hara's. They're like, maybe we could sell it to the guy with all the money.
But people are generally excited about this fight. I have people constantly asking me, about the media and when it's going to happen. We're going to see build up. We're going to hear from Conor. He will show up, probably late, but I'm massively looking forward to a further narrative we're going to get from this press conference, because they're both 2 good trash talkers.
Okay, good stuff, Niall. Thanks for that. Now, before we finish up, here's Niall Tovey speaking to Raf about South Africa winning the African Cup of Nations in the year 1996 and lifting the trophy next to Nelson Mandela.
So we were starting to realise we could play and live with the best, and it was a huge relief that we had done the job, because a lot of pressure came in that last match, given the fact that now Tunisia weren't by any regard the favourite. So there was a lot of pressure, but we dealt with it well and went through it well. So it was a relieving moment when you could just lift that trophy. And if you have to know how heavy that trophy is, one of the heaviest trophies that is around. But just the whole euphoria of the moment picked it up like it was. It weighed absolutely nothing. So yeah.
Well, definitely well worth it, regardless of how heavy it is. Obviously, you mentioned the relief. Was that followed then quickly by realising how symbolic this was in terms of uniting the country? Because there were obviously difficulties early on outside, in the societal and political sense in that period. So it also just helps to pave that way and make things a little bit easier for the different groups to come together.
100%. I mean, as I said, the rugby had done wonders. But the football really brought everybody. It brought persons that were working in farms and distant lands, together, and trying to get into a shebeen and watch it on TV, and everybody, the whole country, even white farmers were watching, and so it was really a really beautiful moment for the country. And as Mandela said, there's nothing better than what sport can do to unify a country, and it brought so many people together.
Yeah, great stuff there from Raf on Team 33, and you should subscribe to the Team 33 podcast feed and dig it out on our YouTube channel as well. It's a pretty amazing story, obviously completely overshadowed by the rugby story in the Rugby World Cup from 95, but you suspect for a lot of South Africans winning the 1996 African Cup of Nations means just as much, if not more, than the rugby team progressing. There's a story coming from Donegal I think it's from the Donegal Democrat. It is from the Donegal Democrat, where the referee of the Division 3 under 14 county final was locked in the dressing room for his own safety. So this is a bit of madness. The game is between Nave Breed, Pedigo and Red Hughes from Killygordon and Mount Charles, and was won by Nave Breed, Pedigo, and apparently the official, who is an experienced official, was confronted by a large group of supporters believed to be Red Hughes followers as he made his way off the pitch after the final whistle. He was then escorted by a number of St. Noel's club officials to the dressing room, and such was the ferocity of the abuse. The referee was kept in the dressing room for the best part of 20 minutes. The referee is a member of the St. Noel's club, and that's why they were looking after one of their own. There was no physical contact. The attack was purely verbal and very aggressive in its tone. This is madness. The under 14 Division 3 final.
It's not the only situation.
It's always the parents causing the shit. It's always parents at under 14 level, because they're still kind of at that level where they think that little Johnny can go on and represent Donegal or whatever, even though they're in Division 3.
Yeah, so that's an unnecessary slight.
Right. But it's the madness of the parents that's causing this.
Yeah.
It's not the under 14 players who were beating down the door going, you've denied us our chance at winning a Division 3 title, which actually, in a couple of years' time, will either be a good story for us or something we get over tonight.
Like, I don't want to cast aspersions on behaviour of fans, but it also says in this article, meanwhile, senior referee Eugene McHale has confirmed his dressing room door was kicked a number of times in Glenculum on Saturday night following the intermediate championship game between Nave Columba and St. Noel's. The former Mayo inter-county footballer said he didn't know who had kicked the door. Nave Columba won a closely contested game by a point. Who kicked the door? We need to find out. We need to weed out the rat here. Donegal officials were, as of yesterday lunchtime, also awaiting referee Jimmy White's report from Sunday's championship clash between St. Eunan's and Gaydor. There are a number of reports of a number of incidents between the players from the two teams and officials in the warm-up area and in the tunnel area leading into the pitch. It all kind of gives the impression of like a WWE kind of fight where they bring it backstage. It's like table and chairs, bar brawl, bring it off the pitch, let's have a fight in the tunnel sort of thing. Which is, I guess it's kind of exciting.
They might have been lucky that game wasn't televised, because apparently the brawl was pre-match. One of them started it. You were certainly seeing tweets about it as that unfolded at the senior level. So that's under 14 and two senior incidents in the space of a week.
The under 16s and minors need to get their act together on the violence stakes.
All right, our competition winner today, it looks like it could be another record attendance of 50,000 or more at Croke Park on Sunday, which would be an absolutely amazing achievement for the LGFA and for Dublin and Cork, of course, as well. We had a couple of pairs of tickets to give away this morning, and so congratulations to Dean Walsh over on YouTube, to Isla Cody on Twitter, and to Barry O'Connor. We're going to be giving away one more pair on our Instagram page a little bit later on today, so get over to Instagram and search Off the Ball, and you'll find we've a couple of different Instagram accounts actually, so well worth getting on board with that. Now, 1 o'clock today, the PwC All-Star Awards Roadshow. Michael Quinlivan, Andy Moran, Joe Canning and Liam Rush are going to join Joe for a live show broadcasting right across all of our social channels. Then at 5 o'clock today, the Keith Andrews Show. Andy Reid, Keith and Liam Lawrence on the Irish Shit Show over the past few weeks. And you couldn't ask for a better guest list than Andy Reid and Liam Lawrence when it comes to everything that's been going on over the last while. Off the Ball tonight, presenting is Nathan Murphy. John Giles is going to be in studio. And the football show between 9 and 10. Obviously, they'll be looking forward to some of the weekend's rugby action as well. Off the Brawl, our brand new OTB show with Andy Lee, Ronan Mullen, Niall McGrath and Phil Egan will stream after 10 o'clock tonight. Then tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, we are streaming Friday Night Rugby with Brian O'Driscoll. That's after OTB AM at 7:45. And then tomorrow night, it's a very special Friday Night Racing live and in glorious Technicolor from the Leopardstown Inn. Joe Schmidt, John Small, Johnny Murtagh, Johnny Ward and John Duggan as well. Johnny, Joe, Johnny. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:45. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.